first review of 2017, Run the Jewels, Run the Jewels 3. Just to remind you, though, when Pitchfork reviews things, they review them on a 0 to 10 scale. Somewhere around 8.2 or 8.3. They give it a B&M if it's a new release, or a BNR if it's a reissue of an old album, anthology, greatest hits, live album, something like that. So, Darren, why don't you kick it off?
Right, so Run the Jewels 3 on Tuesday received an 8.6 B&M with a review by Sheldon Pierce. A little bit of background on Run the Jewels. They are, of course, the wildly popular collaborative project between rapper Killer Mike and rapper-producer LP. Both have had long careers in hip-hop, though neither found much mainstream success until teaming up in 2012, when LP produced Killer Mike's critically acclaimed rap music, and Killer Mike appeared on LP's similarly acclaimed Cancer for Cure. Coincidentally, both albums dropped within a week of each other, and so the pair decided to tour together and felt that the chemistry was just so good that they ought to form a group together. Run the Jewels' first self-titled record was released as a free download in 2013 and was praised for its fun and aggressive energy, though most publications agreed that it paled in comparison to the pair's more serious solo work. However, their follow-up, Run the Jewels 2 from 2014, expanded both the lyrical and musical scope considerably and was acclaimed everywhere. Pitchfork even named it the best album of 2014 and argued that it captured the zeitgeist of the protest culture that was emerging at the time. Pitchfork also argues that RTJ3 does much of the same, only with more urgency and anger, fitting for the start of the Trump era. So, have you guys had any previous familiarity with Run the Jewels?
Yeah, I really loved their first record when that came out. I thought it was like, something fresh and new, and it was just like, it had so much energy. It was I used to listen to it and like bike and stuff all the time. And then I liked the second one, not quite as much, but same way, had that energy and fun with a little bit of seriousness here and there. But yeah, so I was a fan for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm kind of coming at this from pretty much the same way, in the sense that, like, I really liked the first release and have just sort of felt like Run the Jewels 2 was sort of a little bit lesser, and now this one's like a little bit lesser. We'll get more to that, but, I was totally on board at first. It actually inspired me to look back at, rap music and Cancer for Cure, which I hadn't listened to before. And, I thought they were fine, but I just thought that first Run the Jewels record, yeah, it was just really, really fun. It was just cool how it was like two rappers with quite good chemistry, just kind of like trading bars, jumping back and forth. And, it was just like sort of a fun throwback to that kind of like old school, duo way, tag team way of rapping,
B-boy era and stuff.
Yeah. So really like that, was excited for 2, a little bit less excited for this one, but we'll get to that more. What about you, Darren?
I've always heard of Run the Jewels, but hadn't really given them a serious listen until now. So, yeah, this is my first time.
Well, how can we describe the sound of this one? And I guess for Dan, how would you contrast the sound of this one to the previous releases? But I'm also interested to hear how Darren, as a fresh listener, would describe it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I don't want to jump the gun and give my feelings too much until we get really into the review. But the sound is pretty similar to the old records, if you have heard those, So let's hear what Darren, as a new listener, wants to say. I just don't want to show my hand too early.
I guess when I first started listening to it, I would say that it didn't really sound as though they were like two separate, solo rappers coming together. I guess, we kind of get that feel from other records where it sounds very much like, they're just sort of collaborating on a project. This felt, legitimately like they had, were working together throughout the entire record. I don't know if that's making any sense, but as far as like something that sounded somewhat recognizable to me, like I guess listening to Danny Brown a lot last year, this sort of sounded like it kind of falls in place with that. Of course, Danny Brown appears on a track. He felt like he was, right in place on that track, I would agree that there's like a lot of energy, kind of aggressive, I guess. I didn't really get much of the political stuff until like, repeated listens. But, right. There's kind of like energy all the way throughout, but there wasn't anything that really seemed like explosive. I don't know. Maybe I'm just meandering at this point, but
yeah, I mean, the thing I think to know if you are a new listener is that they've sort of developed this reputation for like being very politically outspoken, which is, you know, kind of interesting because the first Run the Jewels record is not, you know, not about that very much at all. Although, you know, like Killer Mike's rap music album is super that, like way more even than Run the Jewels is. But, you know, that first Run the Jewels record was just kind of like playful. You know what I mean, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. This is almost, you know, they've become more and more political, but even the second one wasn't like overtly political. You know, there was like dashes of it here and there, but it seems like they're moving further and further towards how that album rap music is. And you know, it's probably because Killer Mike was like active in the election and everything this year. Yeah. So, you know, it's hard to separate those two things, you know, for them, but yeah, it just seems like they're trying a little too hard to be like what Pitchfork really. I always thought like Pitchfork like kind of overblew the politicalness of Run the Jewels too. You know, like it was there, but it wasn't like the main thing. When you listen to that record, you were like, "That's a political record,"
right?
You know, and so I think this is like what Pitchfork wanted Run the Jewels 2 to be.
No, that's a really good point because I think a lot of people were caught off guard by Run the Jewels 2 being the number one album of 2014. And it's, to me, kind of a funny story because this was like the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement. And you could tell that Pitchfork wanted so badly to make an important album number one. And like, you know, like Kendrick Lamar took that year off. Solange hadn't popped up yet. You know, it was like, it was hard. They were digging. And couldn't find something that really stuck. And they were like, all right, fuck, Run the Jewels will be it. Because it's kind of like, it sounds a little bit like Revolutionary Anger. But I felt like they were just imposing that from like Killer Mike's previous stuff a little bit. Even though it was a little bit present, like you said, it was just like imposed. And then I think you're totally right that it's like this album sounds like the album that Pitchfork pretended like they were listening to.
Yeah, exactly. How mad was Pitchfork when, you know, they thought Run the Jewels 2 was this big political album, and then they re-release it as a remix made with cat sounds. that really you know, boosted the credibility.
The other funny twist is that like a week after Pitchfork published their end of the year list in 2014, D'Angelo returned after like, you know, 14 years or something and dropped like this incredible statement about like, you know, from a black musician about the black experience, you know, with soul and like funk and just like a great record that they actually gave the highest score of the year to. And you could tell they wish they could go back and make it their number one. But okay, so how about, you know, Darren, yeah, I think you kind of moved into the lyrics and stuff, but as far as like the production, now LP has kind of gotten a reputation for his production, which I think is pretty impressive. Like he's got quite a unique sound. You know, could you try to put that into words, Darren?
It's kind of difficult because there wasn't really anything that I felt like was blowing me away, I guess. So he is it Killer Mike or LP that basically produced the whole record?
LP.
So LP produces the whole record. I don't know. It has like this almost like mashup sort of feel, and like maybe it's because there's like so many different guests on the album, you know, that it gets kind of, it just sounds like chaos, like controlled chaos though, like throughout, you know what I mean? Like I don't really know.
Okay.
It wasn't until I actually like read the Pitchfork review and was like, oh, okay, so like there's this whole political element. I mean, I heard like the MLK you know, sample and stuff the first few times I listened to it, but it wasn't until I kind of it was brought to my attention that, hey, there's a big political statement here, that it was really put out there. So it wasn't like in my face. It felt like the first few listens.
Yeah. How would you describe like the production, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, LP like definitely has a style. It is a little hard to put into words, but like, you know that it's LP if you're familiar. He does like a lot with the with like samples. He uses them in like kind of a weird way, like Call Ticketron, how it's got that like live from the garden thing, like over and fucking over. It's so annoying, but he does that kind of thing a lot. Normally not to like such an annoying extent, but just like little things like that. He's got he's just kind of got like little signature things that just sound very LP. It's like really hard to put into words, though, I think.
Yeah, it'll be like really, like the beats are always really hard hitting. Like the drums are like, you know, hard hitting. And then, there's often like a sample or something that's like, just like that, like la 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 la, and it's like, you know, it's like just kicking your ass kind of. And then there's a lot of like really, maybe it's just like a fool's errand to try to describe like a musical style in words, but you know, it's like almost like crunchy, like almost glitched out like synth samples and stuff a lot of the time. Sometimes it reminds me of like early 2000s rap, you know, when everything was like really synth heavy, but then done like really aggressively. It's pretty distinct, and I think it's kind of the coolest part of the whole Run the Jewels experience, that his production I think is top notch, honestly. And I've always felt that like Killer Mike is a much better rapper than LP. But it's like balanced because the production is also so good. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's, you know, I think they would probably agree with that too, you know. I mean, Killer Mike has been a rapper the whole time. LP, I've only listened to one or two of his solo things, but he doesn't really like rap that much. You know, so he's somewhat new to it, I guess. Yeah. He's got like a lot of instrumental records.
Yeah. But I would also kind of say, and I wonder what you guys think about this, that, you know, even though it always felt like Killer Mike was kind of out rapping LP, you know, it was still sort of like balanced. I feel like on this record, like Killer Mike is kind of taking over, and it does feel like the more political direction they're going would not be like LP's choice. You know, he does more of like these just sort of general like, fuck you guys, like that's sort of his thing, whereas Killer Mike is like, fuck capitalism. It's like just a difference, but you know, it just feels like LP is kind of like shrinking to the background a little bit here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially because LP on the older one, he's like the dick joke guy, you know, like he's gonna come at you with the dick jokes, and then Killer Mike's gonna, you know, say something. Killer Mike says funny things too, but a lot more serious things come out of his mouth than LP's. Whereas this one, like Killer Mike's taken more of the driver's seat lyrically, while LP's like backed up. Like this album's like not funny at all, which you know, that was like Run the Jewels, the first album especially, that was like 90% of the fun of it, was that it was like such a fun album. It's like something that we haven't had in rap really in like quite a while. It's just like two dudes having fun. Like it didn't sound like they were working, you know. It was like they sat down on a weekend and, you know, we're just doing this to have fun, and they happened to release it, you know? And I just feel like that's going away now that they've been together so long.
Yeah, I feel like what you guys are describing is sort of like what made the album seem confusing to me, because it was difficult to follow whatever sort of direction it was set out on, because you would have somebody rapping about bitches and you know, whatever, and then somebody trying to make like a serious statement on the very next song. So I had a hard time following the direction. I think that was why, like, you know, I guess Killer Mike's sort of political stance was like almost like muddled, even though he dominates, and I agree, he dominates like the majority of the record. It just felt like, you know, it was hard to get the message, I guess, for somebody who has never really listened and didn't really know anything about the background. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I want to get your take on this, Darren, but I guess, you know, Dan as well. But certainly as a new listener, I've always had a hunch, and it's like I was afraid to admit it to myself until now, finally, with Run the Jewels 3. Like, I don't think either Killer Mike or LP is a good enough rapper to, like, you know, maintain a record. Like, it's not like we're listening to Outkast here. You know what I mean? Would you agree with that, Darren?
Yeah. I mean, I would. My very first.
They sound like sidemen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But
it already felt
together. It's not.
It felt. It feels tired. Like the whole formula feels tired. Like halfway through this record, you know what I mean. And once you get to the rest of the record, it doesn't really seem to change things up that often. You know, when you listen to like Outkast, I mean, you're just kind of all over the place, but it's done in such a, you know, kind of like a brilliant way, and it keeps you sort of on the edge of your seat. This just didn't, you know, there was not like a moment in the album that it was like really captured me and kind of held me in its grip. It never really happened, you know?
Yeah, I agree. They do kind of have that sidemen quality, you know. I mean, Killer Mike, he started out, you know, guesting on Outkast, and like those verses are like pretty rad and stuff. And then, you know, like rap music, that album, it's a pretty good album, but I like really think I like a certain song. It's not like an album I really want to like listen to the whole thing. There's like a few songs, you know, like Reagan's a really good song and stuff. Right. But it's like, you know, I get really tired if I try to listen to that entire album.
Yeah.
But you know, so it is kind of like two sidemen, which I think worked on the first one, because I think they had that, like, it was almost like they knew that they were like two sidemen coming together to like, and it just like feels like they've forgotten that or something.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. Is like the first album was quite short actually, and it was just like a burst of like joyous, fun, old school hip hop energy, sort of. You know, still really aggressive, but it was like we've been saying, really fun, and it was just really short and to the point. You know, 10 like short songs. The whole thing was like barely over 30 minutes, and it just killed. And I feel like, yeah, they started to, you know, Run the Jewels 2 was like, all right, let's make like a big statement. Let's make like a full album with like, you know, it'll be longer, and it'll be like, you know, all the beats are just going to be bigger, and the topics are going to be a bit bigger, and, you know, the presentation, we're going to bring in like guest verses. And of course on the first album, Big Boy from Outkast actually makes one short guest appearance, but that's it, I think, on the whole album. Run the Jewels 2 had a number of guests, and then this one has like way more. You know, this one has like, you know, it's just like, I don't know how to put this into words. It's like, I like the political direction, sort of. I like the fire. I would agree with Pitchfork that this album is like almost more urgent and more aggressive than anything they've ever done, but it's also more bloated than anything they've ever done. And if this was condensed into like 30 minutes of just like fire, I think I would like it a lot more. You know, I love Danny Brown, but he doesn't need to be here. You don't need Kamasi Washington like blasting on the sax on, you know, one of the songs just for the fuck of it. You don't need Zach De La Rocha to, you know, make another appearance like he did on the previous album. You know, it feels like the last couple songs are closers almost. Like, this thing is just too bloated. I would like them so much more if they just got more condensed again. You know what I mean? Run
the Jewels 1 is 33 minutes long.
Yeah.
Run the Jewels 2, 39 minutes. And then this one, 51 and a half. You know, that's a big jump up, and it's
tiring.
Yeah, it's tiring. That kind of energy is too much for an hour. Yeah. You know, you want that short burst of energy, and then, you know, like I said, I used to like ride my bike to the first two records, and it was just like the perfect amount of time. You know, it was like the entire, you know, you could bike to the whole record, and the record's done, and you're back home or whatever. Like this one, just too long. It just doesn't sustain the energy. And yeah, the features, I love Danny Brown. He's one of my favorite artists, and I just, you know, I don't feel like he adds anything super necessary to that song. And Kamasi Washington, unneeded. I wish we all could stop pretending that Zach De La Rocha was good. But, you know, here we are.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, it sounds like we're all kind of on the same page on this. So, you know, the score, 8.6 BNM. I was pretty surprised that it got a BNM. You know, it just felt like the time when Pitchfork jumps off of a bandwagon a little bit early, because, I don't know, I guess first off, do you guys think, or maybe only Dan can answer this, but, you know, would you say like Run the Jewels is just overrated in like a completely impossible to fix way by now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's completely run its course. You know, like this should be their last album. You know, there's no way to fix, because they're not. I don't want to say they're untalented, but they don't have like. I don't think they could do something else to like, something brand new and fresh. I think what they do is what they do.
Yeah. And I felt that way about this one, which was like, okay, Run the Jewels 3, here it comes. They better like really do something new.
It sounded exactly like what I thought it was going to sound like.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine if they announce Run the Jewels 4 next year?
Oh, and they will. I mean,
Jesus Christ! When is Pitchfork going to jump off the bandwagon?
But it's not just Pitchfork. It's like really shocked me. The first night when this came out, I listened to it and I thought, this nothing new here. This is going to get kind of panned. Everyone be kind of disappointed, and like everyone on the internet like loves this record. All Music gave it 4.5. Consequence of Sound B+. Enemy gave it 5 stars. Rolling Stone even gave it 4. Like there's not been a bad review yet. It's like it shocks me, honestly. Like I don't know why everyone hasn't noticed that this is just the same record again, but longer.
Well, I guess as a first time listener, Darren, how do you feel about that score?
I mean, I don't really particularly like it. I'm thinking of our the way I view B&Ms as being something that, needs to be heard. Something that's like obviously fresh, somewhat groundbreaking in some way. And none of those qualities really seem to fit here. I mean, just by listening to it and growing tired of it on my first couple of listens, you can just sort of tell that it just doesn't have a whole lot of staying power. So no, I don't think I'd give it a B&M. I think I'd go somewhere around maybe like the 7.5 range.
Yeah, what score would you give it, Dan?
I think I'd go lower than that. I'd give it like a 6.6. It's not like horrible, it's just the same album again, which is like unnecessary. If this was Run the Jewels 2, I might like it a little more. I think I'd still complain about the length. It's just too long, no matter what. But this would be better if it was Run the Jewels 2. It's just, it's run its course. Yeah. Run the course. That's
Run the course.
That's what I'll title my review.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I mean, I just feel like the formula has, sort of had diminishing returns each time, and the Run the Jewels 2, there was like enough there still to make it quite interesting, although it just felt like it was getting a little bit bigger and didn't need to. It could have stayed focused and tight, like almost like a punk record or something. So as for the score, I just think it's I maybe a 7.9 I would give it, because it's pretty enjoyable. I mean, it gets tiring by the end, but it's it's just like it's just that it's the same thing. It's like still quite good, but it's just the same thing again. A little bit angrier, but also the hooks are a little bit less interesting. So it's almost like I would give the first one something like a 9. Run the Jewels 2 something like an 8.5, and now we're down to like a 7.9. And I pray to God they don't release Run the Jewels 4, or Meow the Jewels 2 or whatever. Just retire.
Bark the Jewels.
Yeah, Bark the Jewels. All right, we ready to move on to the next record?
To hear the rest of our discussion, check out our website, metaforkmusic.com, or search us out on iTunes, Metafork Music.